Hey everyone, you're listening to the podcast Trust the Process, a safe space where you will hear from us women balancing their fitness and health while life goes on. Balanced diet, muscle gain, fat loss, new motherhood, getting back in shape, menopause onset, and so much more. And you are tuned into our latest episode Asian Diet Blueprint, the Zen Way of Eating. This is your host, Shanti. I'm based in Malaysia. I'm a cybersecurity specialist, a wife, a mom to two boys and one dog, a budding Veena player, an avid reader, a globetrotter, and a fitness enthusiast.
And this is Yasha. Based in Singapore, I'm professionally a cloud technologist, a visual artist, a wife, a mother, a dog mom, and most importantly, a fitness enthusiast. Well, in this episode, we will explore the fundamental principles of traditional Asian dietary patterns and how they align with modern nutrition science. We will also focus on how we can include all necessary macros being on a typical Asian diet, which sometimes is vegetarian and other times completely depends on the geography, such as coastal, tropical, extreme cold, or even extreme hot weather. We will throw light on how to balance your macros, being on the Asian diet, and design your own diet blueprint. So let's dive in.
Yasha, this is a perfect and a very timely topic to discuss how we can design our diet blueprint, especially with the Asian diet in focus. And we dived into this episode because a lot of listeners have been demanding to know more about the diet blueprint. So let's address this. And I feel we need to and we can very well address this topic on how one can design a balanced and a nutritious diet plan while living in any part of Asia or, in fact, living anywhere in the world, but preferring to have an Asian diet.
Well, I can definitely echo that the topic is the need of the hour. But do explain what do you mean when you said we can address the topic?
Yasha, don't you think it's something that comes naturally to both of us? Having been born and raised in the Indian subcontinent, you from the northern belt and I from the southern part of India, and then traveling and living all over the world and finally spending a major part of our lives in Southeast Asia, I think we have done a fair bit of Asian cooking and eating. That's exactly what I meant.
I guess so. Yeah. And it's ingrained in our culture, rightly said. Most women, girls, and current generation boys too would know how to whip their Indian curry or kimchi noodles or bowl of green Thai curry. Also, Shanti, recently there is a growing global interest in Asian dietary patterns, and this represents a significant shift in nutritional as well as cultural awareness. I know a lot of food globalization has been done. Like we have these paneer pizzas or kimchi pastas, and we have Mexican paratha or tofu biryani floating around on the world menu, which means every cuisine is everywhere in the world. But when we speak about Asian diet, there are some fundamental patterns and anti patterns, which are like fads or myths a lot of times. And we will definitely speak about those, how to balance the nutrients and macros with those diets, the health benefits as well as sustainability aspects of Asian diets. And of course, certain challenges, but most importantly, some example meal plans for our listeners to be able to design their healthy diet blueprints with a variety of Asian food choices.
Oh, it's going to be a very, very interesting topic, Yasha. We both are
Sure.
food lovers and clearly enjoy talking about food and the different world cuisines. And you touched upon the growing global interest in Asian diets. In fact, some blue zones also belong to this part of the world, right? And just for the benefit of our listeners, let me define blue zones first. These are those regions on earth where people tend to live significantly longer and healthier than in the other average regions. A lot of centennials belong to these blue zones, and there have been studies done on those people and their life habits, in particularly their dietary habits. And Okinawa in Japan is declared a blue zone, but I'm hearing that Singapore is also being considered as one of the upcoming blue zones. Is that right?
Yeah, Shanti. They're calling Singapore as Blue Zones 2.0. When we speak about blue zones, it's important to know that it is tightly connected with the food and the lifestyle of people that's making them healthy and live longer. And traditionally, these dietary habits in most of Asia focus on that a lot. That is, what I mean is, each and every food item was integrated with cultural beliefs, religious practices, and deeply inclined towards traditional health practices such as, Ayurveda in India, Chinese medicine we call TCM, yin and yang concepts, five elements. And if we zoom in, did you know, Shanti? Most Asian diets are plant based at the core, while some meat or fish is available per geography and location.
Wow, I always thought meat is the core of Asian diet. In fact, I just got back from a trip to Taiwan and all I heard was pork and beef in their cuisine. And I don't eat either of those meats. And I really found it a bit tiring and daunting to just order only chicken, or vegetarian dishes in Taiwan. In fact, my husband and I were wondering if a staunch vegetarian could really survive in a country like Taiwan, North Asia. You know what I mean? Because they didn't understand just vegetarian, really. So it's very interesting to know about the plant based being the core of Asian diet. It's very, very interesting.
Mm, and you're not alone. I also thought the same, but after some research on scientific and traditional origin of Asian diets, it seems the core is indeed plant based, and we will talk about what the core means. But yeah, I know.
Wow. That's a very intriguing fact, Yasha. But yes, I agree. Asian diets are very, very diverse and are very tightly aligned with religion as well. Example, Hindus like us, all over the world, we worship certain animal gods and we stay away from consuming that meat, especially during their religious practices. And we know Muslims are very particular about their food being halal. In China, the influence of Taoism has led to the deeply rooted belief in that the food is a way to long life. Food is considered to be medicinal in most Asian cultures, and all foods are classified according to their medicinal properties. For example, yogurt, which is a probiotic, has a well known cooling effect on the human body. And on the other hand, ginger heats the blood and thus is beneficial to people with anemia. So it's very interesting, right?
I know, and there is so much similarity in these cultures, don't you think? Like medicinal properties you talked about, described in Taoism. I can very well relate to our Indian households where we have food remedies for almost every disease. If stomach flu, then a type of diet. If influenza, then another type of diet. I remember my dad won't eat rice or yogurt at dinner time during winters, stating that those food have cold pairing properties. So yeah, food in our Asian culture is not just food to satiate our tummies, but a source to properly nourish our bodies with their background, scientific background. So, summarizing on the religious attachment of Asian diets, I just want to quote in Japan, through the influence of Buddhist proscription on killing, meat was not commonly eaten until the later part of the 19th century. Did you know that?
I mean, who could believe that in today's world when sometimes vegetarians, which I just mentioned, that we struggle as tourists in countries like Japan or Taiwan. But yeah, Yasha, I think our audience must be wondering why are these talking about cultural and religious significance of Asian diets? I'm sure we want to shed some light on this.
Very well, yeah. We are in modern times, and also the victims of what sells the best would be the best for our bodies. Every single year, a new research comes in and thrown back at us, right? So, before helping design the diet blueprint, I think it is important to acknowledge what Asian diets are, after all. What is their origination? Hence, a walk down to the memory lane, recollecting all the facts about traditional Asian diets.
Now that makes sense. And yes, we did speak about the globalization of Asian diets, considering its benefits, similar to what we have heard of Mediterranean diets, etc. I think, yeah, it's good we also find out which traditional practices are still valid in about Asian diets in the 21st century.
You're right. Mankind has evolved, and so has our food and dietary practices. Historically, regional Asian diets were based on local agriculture, and there were a lot of fermentation techniques to preserve food, some of which are still ongoing in our yummy pickles. It started with rice and wheat, which then progressed to new world crops like potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, etc., which didn't exist in this part of the world earlier, right? That came from the other side of the earth during colonial times. So this is how it evolved.
And then there was the Persian Arabian food influence on Asia with the coming of Islam, along with a lot of Turkish methods of cooking, like the use of hot peppers, black pepper, cloves, and other strong spices, like in both Chinese as well as ancient Indian cooking, right?
Yeah, you were about to say like chilies. Okay, we spoke about the origin of Asian diets, way of cooking, and specific food preferences on culture. Something else to be noted is the mindful cooking practices in the Asian diet. Well, it must exist in all different diets, but we are speaking about Asian diet today. The steaming, the boiling, the fermentation, quick stir frying, the soups, the broths, the herbs and spices, different types of tea or chai or cha that we call it. All these are very typical of almost every type of Asian diet. And thankfully, it still is in practice.
I'm really thankful, really. Yeah, we pretty much use the combination of these techniques, but using modern appliances, which makes our lives healthier and easier. But listening to all this historical background on the Asian diet, I'm feeling so happy and proud. Happy because we are still practicing most of the traditional principles of Asian diet that we spoke about just now, and proud because there's so much goodness in the Asian way of eating, right, Yasha? And we both have been living in Southeast Asia and can enjoy the worlds of Chinese, Thai, Indian, Japanese, and all kinds of cultures being cooked here.
Well, any kind of diet has its own challenges, but I agree with you. And sometimes during evolution or impacted by fusion cooking styles, we unintentionally get inclined more towards taste and go farther and further away from actual benefits that could be reaped. So let's talk about both the ways of building a perfect healthy meal plan, but also the fads or the challenges associated with Asian diets these days. So, speaking about building a healthy meal plan, let's start with basics. Shanti, have you heard of very famous Asian heritage diet pyramid?
We did chat about it the other day, and I wasn't familiar with it, to be honest, until recently. But the concept is wonderful, right? So, Asian Heritage Diet Pyramid emphasizes a base of whole grains, fruits, veggies, legumes, nuts, and seeds, followed by moderate portions of your fish, seafood, eggs, and poultry. And then, of course, Asian cuisine is also known for its usage of herbs and spices, which adds flavor and potential health benefits. And of course, healthy oils or butter included as a source of healthy fats. Then there are beverages, plain water or unsweetened tea or milk versions of tea and coffee. All are encouraged in the Asian diet pyramid, right? It also encourages a daily physical activity and enjoyment of the meals along with the others. So it's a wonderful concept. I personally think so.
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah, I agree. And it includes the physical activity as well in a food pyramid. Wow. This can be the basis of designing your own healthy diet blueprint without going too far from your roots for those who are Asians.
Certainly. Well, anyone can follow, and we are just elaborating on the Asian diet today. So, coming back to the pyramid, the base or the core of the diet is vegetables or grains for carbs and fibers, legumes and their byproducts for protein, and nuts and seeds for that essential fat. Now, while a lot of Asian countries' diets are vegetarian, as we already mentioned, still a lot of other countries do have fish and meat as a staple diet, which is on top of the core or base we just talked about. Well, it's diverse, but I guess more focus is there on maintaining all the macros balanced if you look at the traditional Asian diet.
Yeah. And we did mention about that. The food and diet depends a great deal on the geolocation. If the population is living on an island or coastal region, they do have fish and seafood as the staple diet, which, by the way, is very high in omega 3 and other necessary proteins. Eggs and lean meat are also part of a lot of Asian diets. However, we see less of red meats in our diets in this part of the world. but there are exceptions. So I'm sure our vegetarian friends are thinking about their ever existing problem of how do I complete my proteins being on the vegetarian diet?
Oh, that's a constant issue I keep hearing from my vegetarian friends, and those who observe a vegetarian diet during a religious practice or a month as well, like yourself, right? I am predominantly a non-vegetarian, therefore I do not understand the pain exactly, but I believe that this could be a struggle if we do not pay enough attention to balancing our macros. We spoke about the wonderful balanced macros of the traditional Asian diet that comes naturally if you go past history, but you will reckon with me, Asha, that over the past many decades, the balance is lost. It has actually recently only become an epidemic to address how to bring that required protein in our diets, right? I agree that protein is a very, very important macro for our muscles to be maintained for hair, nails, everything, as important as carbs for the brain to work, right?
Absolutely, Shanti. And it has indeed become an issue because none of us stick to our traditional values of diets and food anymore. We eat fusion, as we have said earlier, and we are globetrotters. So we also are not able to keep up with the concept of eat what you grew up eating, isn't it? So let's address that and provide this valuable info to our listeners, both through data and our own experiences. Ideal breakup of macros in our diet is around 20 to 30% of protein, 45 to 55% of carbs, and 25 to 35% of fat, and of course, some fibers that comes along. This is a recommended balanced macronutrient ratio.
Yeah, but however, this combination can be played around with based on goals one has. One has to remember that. For example, for someone wanting to lose weight or reduce the fat percentage, they will have to increase the protein in their diet and reduce the carbs, and they have to go on a calorie deficit. Now, this also comes with a proper guidance based on one's age group and amount of physical activity one is doing. Therefore, I wouldn't want to quote a generic number for calorie deficit over here, right?
Right. That's the homework one has to do himself or herself. We have mentioned this is in one of our episodes, Shanti, on how to set up a goal and then align your fitness routine as well as macronutrients according to that. I would stress upon this point that there is a hell lot of information available on Google, Instagram, and lots of other social media. Please do not chase those 1100 kilocalorie diet or cut versus bulk phase looking at your ideals on social media. Do that with the proper guidance, right? We need to create our own diet blueprint as per our own body requirements, age, fitness goal, and availability of items.
Can't agree more, Yasha. No yo yo diets, but also no copycat diets from the social media. So, coming back to designing our diet blueprints based on Asian food types, if we keep the macros in check, then we have certain food groups to choose from within Asian diets. So, that is already half the work done, right?
Absolutely. Okay, drum rolls. Let's start with the right carbohydrates choices that we get in Asian diets. More so the complex carbs. That is, these are the type of carbs that are made up of long chains of sugar molecules like starches and fiber and are digested slower than simple carbohydrates, resulting in a gradual release of glucose into the bloodstream, providing sustained energy. These are for sure a better choice when you are selecting carbs. So I know it's getting a little bit scientific, but it's important to understand the difference. From an Asian diet perspective, we can choose from brown rice or white rice, two eaten in almost all Asian countries. Whole wheat, tons of millets, pearl, buckwheat, sorghum, very common in the Indian subcontinent. Oats and breads, starchy vegetables such as sweet potatoes and potatoes for most Asian countries, but very common in Japanese diets. Remember blue zones, sweet potatoes, taro, lotus roots, that's heavily eaten in Chinese cuisine. And of course, most vegetables, legumes, and fruits, as well as dairy products, have some carbs in it. Carbs is there everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being an Asian, I don't think finding the right carb source is an issue for anyone. I think the listeners would be nodding their heads to this. Well, enough choices available for both complex and non complex carbs, and it's everyone's favorite. We're definitely not talking about the sugary treats and stuff for sure. We're only talking about the healthy stuff here, and we do have a lot of options, which Yasha just mentioned. Well, you can find junk sources of carbs anywhere because that's easy, and we're not going to touch upon them for sure. Now, another not so difficult macro to hit is fat, right? A lot of tasty and yummy things have fat, of course, but let me enlist some of the healthy choices that our Asian diet provides us in terms of fat. Now, for vegetarians, it could be our dairy products. Almost all Asian cuisines are cooked in fat or oil or either butter or ghee, which is a clarified butter, and some kind of vegetable or nut oil. All these are good sources of fat. In addition to that, having nuts and seeds in the diet on a regular basis also provides essential natural fat. Again, vegetables and fruits like avocado. If you don't want to go too fancy, then the humble banana, apples, and oranges. Well, all these are natural sources of fat. And for non vegetarians, there is obviously a lot more choices in healthy fat like eggs, fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, if you can put up with the smell, or the lean meat, exactly. And some of the yummiest Asian desserts, like the sticky rice with mango. Ooh, I'm hungry now, Yasha. And all the varieties made up of coconut milk, even the sweets made with jaggery and rice flour. All these are healthy fat source. So no complaints next time you want to add that 20 to 30 percentage of good fat into your diet chart.
I am drooling. Oh my God. Both mango and coconut are my favorites. And I feel like jumping into the kitchen and getting something sweet. Okay, that's for later. Before that, let's talk about the most tricky macro, which everyone struggles to keep up with protein. Even I do. So let's see what are available options for protein for us in the Asian diet chart. Of course, there are options available for non-vegetarians. They can easily accomplish that with, eggs in breakfast, some lean chicken meat, or fish or seafood for lunch and dinner, main course, and can easily achieve that 30 to 40% balanced protein. Just that one has to be disciplined, right? I think for non-vegetarians, it's the other way around, as not everything is available and focus only on the source of protein that do not unnecessarily increase fat. So it's important to choose those options wisely. It's a completely opposite problem. Now, for vegetarians, I know if they compare themselves against non-veggies, they will find less options. But I must say, Asian diet in particular, Asian diet chart provides ample options. So, our legumes like beans, lentils, peas, grains such as quinoa and oats, tofu, tempeh, edamame, cheese like cottage cheese, also called as paneer in India, and yogurts. These are all good sources of protein. Um, if you are into keeping a balanced diet, then playing around with these options will suffice. However, if you are in a muscle building phase and our diet chart demands a higher protein amount, then you will need to choose options that are less in fats and have higher protein ratio. With this, I understand we have covered Asian diets option at the macro coverage level, while micronutrients and fibers, etc., are also taken care of in the food family that we covered as part of large macro buckets. So don't fret about protein next time. You can just listen to this and choose your amount of protein that you want to hit through these, just balancing them sometimes higher, sometimes lower.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of choices for sure. And I realized one thing, Yasha, that we only spoke about all the natural food sources and items. We haven't even reached processed foods and other options that are transformed into these macro sources, right? Of course, that's available in the market in the form of protein powders, snacks, supplements, etc. But it is important to design your diet with natural and traditionally marked diet sources in Asian culture. And that's the whole intent of this episode. Now, with the use of our oils, herbs, spices, pickles, and fermented items, there are amazing ways to toss and turn these food types into wonderful recipes. We just have so much variety in the Asian cuisine.
I know, Shanti. Our taste buds are so acclimatized to Asian cuisines. It's funny how I feel in 3, 4 days when I'm traveling on the other side of the globe and then start craving for my chili oils, pickles, spices.
You're talking to a Telugu person, so obviously pickles are a staple in our diet. And in fact, even though I've lived outside of India for so long, my lunch has and will always be a hearty South Indian meal. That is a bowl of white rice, some kind of dal, two kinds of veggies, which I usually make it simple, like a dry veggie boiled and sprinkled with coconut, or a protein rich curry like a soya or an egg or a chicken curry, along with some hot rasam. That's great for digestion. And of course, you end the meal with yogurt, which is an excellent source of probiotics and heals your gut. You might think that's a lot of cooking, but no, it all comes down to planning and prepping, and which we also discussed in our previous episode, right? And you realize that our ancient cuisine is indeed a very well balanced plate. All you have to do in these modern times is to rejig your portions and focus more on protein versus carb loading.
You took me to a lane of memories. That sounds yum, Shanti. And I have to tell you, I first tasted my South Indian food at around the age of 21 or 22 years when I first started working. My first job was in Bengaluru in India, but I became a total fan of South Indian breakfast. Of course, I slowly found out that South India itself has so many states and so many varieties of food from each state. Let's not get into that. So, day in the life of an Asian food diary. It's also important to let everyone know that diets are aligned with current fitness goals. I'm saying that again, I know. So while we provide a sneak peek into our food diaries, please remember it might be aligned to a certain phase or goal that we are inclined towards. For example, right now I'm on a goal of maintaining my muscles and keeping my body fat at 20 to 21%. And to cater to that at my weight, my diet should have at least somewhere around 120 to 130 grams of protein, somewhere around 130 to 150 grams of carbs, and at least 60 to 80 grams of fats as macros. And I achieved that by having 3 meals and 1 or 2 snacks in a day. Trust me, I'm always eating a lot, even if in fat loss phase.
So let's start with a non vegetarian day, right? What is your typical breakfast?
Right. Typically, I start off my day with fruits, like, of course, after your, herbal water, a cup of coffee with protein. I start my day off with fruits like watermelon, melon, berries, and papaya. All these fruits have high value, but low sugar content. So I choose my fruits. 2 eggs, a toast with light butter or peanut butter, and a cup of low fat milk coffee. If I want to load high carbs in the morning after a long run, then I prefer Pro Oats. That's a bowl of oats with protein in it. What about you, Shanti?
I mean, it's very similar. My go to breakfast these days is an overnight oatmeal bowl loaded with two types of fruits like a green apple or berries. Like you rightly said, they have lesser sugar with Greek yogurt and low fat milk. It's so yum. Sometimes I make it savory as well, like you put cucumbers and put some ghee tadka, and that becomes a savory oatmeal as well. But of course, I can't eat that every day. So I usually alternate it with 4 eggs, like two whole eggs and two egg whites, along with some baby spinach, capsicum, and I make it like a hearty omelette, which really keeps me full for like 2 to 3 hours. And my flat white coffee. Over the weekend, the South Indian in me emerges, and we always have a dosa or an idli batter at home anyway. So I truly enjoy my South Indian breakfast. But I've been doing some tweaks to it, like replacing rice with quinoa or millet for the dosa batter. Even or even I have the yummy pesarattu. That's your green gram or a moong dal dosa. All of these are excellent sources of protein. I'm not saying that rice dosa is bad for you, but these tweaks just keep my carbs in check. And they also give me lesser bloating. So you just see what works for you, right? But there are plenty of protein options for breakfast. Now let's dive into lunch, the most important meal of the
Yeah.
day.
Okay, lunch. Yes, lunch will be either a chicken breast with stir fried or roasted vegetables. In vegetables, I prefer broccoli, pumpkin, beans, a lot of greens, edamame. And for carbs, either 100 grams of quinoa or rice or millet or sweet potato. So I just choose one of these. Or I change the meat from chicken to a fish like salmon if I'm going high fats, or sea bass or halibut. So just lean meat.
Right. And I spoke about my South Indian lunch already, so I think I'll spare the audience from that again. Now let's talk about dinner. What's your dinner typically?
Mostly, I prefer an Indian dinner a few days a week, so that my son learns his Indian roots, which will include a bowl of dal, as you mentioned, lentils, a plate of vegetables like spinach, potato, cauliflower, peas, carrots, ladyfinger, brinjal, a lot of varieties, right? Just stir fry or just cook them, roast them. With mostly 100 or 120 grams of rice or a chapati, I usually add a piece of chicken breast or fish again to add the required protein. If non-Indian, then some pasta or lasagna with lots of veggies, chicken or fish. I love Middle Eastern food, so a lot of Lebanese and Turkish, even Thai. Sometimes we cook a lot of varieties, especially on weekends. Basically, a good source of carbs, protein, fibers with fat. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. What
That's
about
a lot.
you?
That Well, my weekday dinners are usually right after a workout, which means I'm super hungry, right? And to hit my protein goals, I usually toss 100 grams of chicken or prawn. I pre-marinate it over the weekend in these Ziplocs so that it's easy. I thaw them out, put them in an air fryer along with some nice roasted veggies, like you just said, and some quinoa on the side. I usually avoid rice in the night, but quinoa just helps me to get that right amount of carbs without worrying too much. I sometimes also like to add tuna or eggs, which are easier to cook. If I'm very impatient, I'm very hungry. But there will always be boiled rajma, that's your kidney beans, or chole, that's your garbanzo beans, in the fridge always. So that's extra protein. You can just toss it up in a salad. Sometimes I do get creative and make burritos by tossing the leftover rice from the lunch, some protein source which is already there, and these beans. And trust me, they're so much better than most takeaways. So yeah, that's typically my dinners. And sometimes, of course, if I'm really tired, the dosa emerges again because it's really easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say that no, I mean, none of our listeners need to fear from rice because
Yes.
rice is best, right?
Yeah.
And I think we should do an episode on not fearing away from rice. I
Absolutely.
have been eating rice past 3 years in dinner because it's by choice as well, and it has not slowed my progress of fat loss or muscle gain. So let's not fear rice. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the most important topic. What about desserts?
I end my day with a dessert. As you know, I like my sweets as much as I like my savory. I have both the tooth, you know. Dessert is usually a bowl of Greek yogurt with some berries, peanut butter powder, and some honey with pumpkin or sunflower seeds to make it a little crunchy. Sometimes I just have a piece of jaggery with few nuts or even a dark chocolate. I really need something sweet. And these days, it's summer, I'm having mangoes as my dessert. Have you ever tried frozen fresh mango? It's
Hmm.
yum. Yeah, I mean, you just take a fresh mango, cut into pieces, freeze it, and just eat it. And it blesses your sweet tooth nicely.
A lot of people have a myth about mango, right? That it's fatty and you should avoid it and it breaks your skin. But apparently, it's really good for your skin. And it's summer season, it's the right season to have your mangoes. So just go ahead and have your favorite fruit as dessert. And of course, I don't have a sweet tooth. That's one thing different from my mom. because she does have a major sweet tooth. But yes, I do indulge in a dark chocolate once in a while. The Greek yogurt with berries is a really good option to keep it handy because you're also hitting your protein goal. So that has been my go-to dessert option. So yeah, I think again you and I are very similar that way. But how can we forget snacks? So what do you do when that hunger pangs hit you in the middle of the day, Yasha? That's $1 million question.
Yeah, and I carry, right? I carry my box of snack a lot of times. Snacks in the day would be one or two coffee or Indian tea, chai without sugar, as I prefer. Some peanuts or nuts, raw nuts. Some fruit, a box of fruit. I always carry a 4 p.m. box of fruit at office. And sometimes, if my macro allows, I indulge in some not so healthy snacks. You know, somebody's munching something and I'll just have a share. So this itinerary gives me my desired macros. So this is how I keep myself on track. How about you, Shanti?
I think same. Yeah, most of my snacks are usually dry fruits or fruits. So I usually have these either green apples or red apples, of course, or pears and bananas. And there's such plenty of great fruit options as your snacks. I do not usually bring any processed foods from the store because that eliminates my chances of eating or my excuse of eating unhealthy, usually. So let's talk about your vegetarian days. I think we've mentioned a lot about the non vegetarian, but I think we should also touch base upon vegetarians.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of my vegetarian friends are waiting until now to hear about that. I won't lie on a vegetarian day, but it's true. It's not easy to get your 140, 150 grams of protein right away. So we know carbs and fat are common, right? So on veggie days, almost everything remains same except I minus meats and replace those with either paneer, some sort of cheese, halloumi cheese or cottage cheese. Tofu, tempeh. I don't like tempeh a lot, but it gives a good protein coverage. Soya beans, soya nuggets. I just take some soya nuggets and mix them in the rice, make a nice pulao kind of thing, and more lentils and feta cheese in the salads, and more yogurt, Greek yogurt. So, yes, on those vegetarian days, I tend to bring my rice or my quinoa or my butter, all those fatty things, little lower because I know that from my protein sources, I will increase my carbs. So that's how I manage. So yeah, the Asian element to my diet is where every grain of what I eat because I live here in Asia. So the flavors, the cooking styles, and the ingredients are naturally Asian. I don't have to make any effort for that. Of course, I add pickles and kimchi and chili oil, etc., to enhance the taste. Um, I'd say my meals are never boring, Shanti. Never.
You bet our meals are never boring. In fact, both of us love cooking, and we've realized in our long journeys of seeking fit wisdom that health begins in one's kitchen, right? Not in a random gym. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. With that, we come to an end of this long, maybe our longest, but yummylicious episode of how to design your Asian diet blueprint. We will hear from you through comments. Please do let us know if we can help you further in helping you with your diet blueprint. We'll be happy to help. You can send us a DM on Instagram, or you can put a comment and we'll reach out. We'll also provide the Insta handle to Healthy Food Labs, where we often put healthy meal plans and recipes for various diet moderations, such as fat loss, high protein, or guilt free desserts.
Yes, and please do not be hesitant and let us know if we can take this topic and help you with that. We will meet again in a fortnight and bring yet another exciting episode for you all. Till then, trust the process.
Trust the process indeed. And do not forget to follow us, subscribe us on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple, because your followership and your subscription helped us grow so that we can bring more and more episodes for you. Please follow us. Trust the process.
Goodbye.